Hello, welcome. Um, my name is Tom,
And I'm Robin.
and we are a couple of putts. And you're tuning in here, hopefully, because you are an interested party in submitting a hole for the mini golf course at Dreamland in Dripping Springs, Texas. And we're excited to have you here. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be recording this event and going to be sharing it out for those that might have questions that weren't able to attend live. So feel free to put your questions in the chat, and we'll get a little bit of a chance after we do a quick presentation for you to also audibly ask your questions if you have them. Hopefully we answer a good chunk of your questions right now. But we're really glad that you joined us, and we're super excited about this course at Dreamland, the Global Adventure course. So let's jump into it, and hopefully I moved the slide right. There we go. So Dreamland, I'm guessing there is a very strong chance that none of you have been there yet, because it just opened this year in the spring. It is a massive complex that has two mini golf courses, a pickleball courses, I should say.
Courts with six.
Courts.
Right? Yeah.
A bunch of kids play areas, lawn games, food and bar, music and arts. The bar is like 55 different taps and 20 different wines. And it's just, the whole place is just this wonderful playground for both adults and kids. They have Sunday kids days that are super fun. And the founders of it, including Steve Kuhn, are just like really big kids that want to make this a fun place for adults and people of all ages. And we happened to visit it in January before they opened to the public, and before they actually finished their second course, the Dream course. So just for context, we're mentioning that, but we'll share out some links that have some photos of all of their courses. But that's a little bit about Dreamland. And, you know, as I said, it's a mission-driven playground that they're really driven by a very inclusive notion of the games that they're putting on their places. So that was really appealed to us. As you can see with a mini golf is for everyone shirt, that's very much how we connected, and it made total sense to start working together. And so, come on, slides. As I alluded to, they have some mini golf courses. And this first one here is their Dream course that was being finished while we were there. This is a little bit more colorful, definitely challenging putting, and it is a concrete built course. And then the second course.
And this one's just 18 holes.
Yep.
The Dream course. Yep.
And so the other course, the challenge course, is 54 unique holes. And the reason why I use the air quotes for those of you that might be just only listening is that with every one of the 18 holes, there's 3 pin placements. So as you can see on the left of the screen, the first hole is like 250 feet almost from the tee off area to the black flag at the very top, the hardest one. There's a red and a green flag that are shorter along. But the idea is that you could play the course in 3 different ways. In some ways, it's 3 courses built in one. You can see on the course, the hole on the right, hole 10, you start nearly 20 feet below the hole, and it's a super cool, unique, challenging course. We've played the green, red, and black flags there, and the black flag course is for real challenging. It's for people that really want, especially if you're playing the black flag course. There's signs talking about, sort of, play at your own risk in a weird way.
It's like the double black diamonds on
Yes,
ski slope.
it's exactly like that. It's super challenging. And so you're thinking, well, they have this Dream course that's a fairly challenging course, and then this challenge course. And they were both, I should say, built in concrete with turf by a local mini golf operator named Mike Stone, who lives up in
local to Minnesota,
sorry, who owns and operates Whistling Wolf Mini Golf and Dark Moon Mini Golf in Cross Lake. That's a course they had built And the 9-hole course that he has similar to the challenge course, where it has 3 pin placements on every hole. So you can play, in theory, the hole 3 different ways, where it ends up being 27 holes and 9 structures. Mike's going to be helping out in some of probably the concrete and bringing it together. But the reason that we were brought on in this project is, as a couple of putts, we've played and reviewed over 300 courses across the world, and we've designed on and consulted on courses all over. And we have a very, as we said, we're deeply invested in the game, but we're also deeply invested in a very playful version of the game, a very whimsical version of the game that the 2 courses that they have right now are about challenge and about putting. And this one is meant to be a lot more whimsical. And it's also mission driven in the fact that Dreamland's big overall kind of agenda is that they're about a real pro-immigration stance and the very welcoming version of America. Open borders. Mm-hmm. And you can see it in their logo that has the Statue of Liberty crown on it. So if you caught that already, you might know that. But we thought it was really great. And we had talked with them about the idea of having a call for proposals and an open platform for people to submit ideas from around the world and around the country to build this global adventure course.
So the theme of this course is immigration, and that is like the key thing when you're considering your proposals. Fun gameplay is great. Unique putting shapes or surfaces or materials is great, but the key thing here is really this idea of immigration. So the United States is home to millions of immigrants that make up around 15% of our population. And our immigrants bring such a rich culture and diversity to our country. So we're looking for holes inspired by either landmarks or cultures from countries where a lot of US immigrants come from. And so below is a list of very popular countries, but it's not limited to this. We're really looking for a global theme. So if your family history is from a country not listed here, that's totally fine. We're super open to it. This is just a starting point list. But really think about that. And you personally don't have to be from this country, although it's great if you are. But again, think about your family history or your connections or your ties to the country that you want to theme your whole design around. And again, this could be really obvious landmarks, or it could be more obscure histories or stories that might not be so obvious. We're interested in all of the above. So for submissions, we really want you to have fun, to be creative, and again, to incorporate that theme of immigration in a really appropriate manner, and to, as the Dreamland's logo says, dream big. We just ask that you don't use any copyrighted or trademark symbols or characters in your proposal. That just adds some logistical issues on our end. And you can apply as either an individual or a team. We highly encourage collaborations. Just keep in mind that if you submit more than one entry as a team or individual, to just do it as a separate submission. So each idea or concept should be its own separate submission, but you could submit as many as you want as a team or an individual. And to apply or submit your ideas, you'll go to this link here, which is also linked in our form, so that everywhere we post it online, you should find this link, but there it is for your reference. And the application itself is pretty simple. We're going to ask you a few questions about contact info, name, email, phone number, etc. The title of your hole. So think of a fun title. We love puns here at A Couple of Putts, but not required for your hole. We'll ask you what country your hole is inspired by, or countries. And then a 2 to 5 sentence description of your concept. So it doesn't have to be long. You don't have to write a book here. We just want a really simple description that kind of paints the picture of what you're envisioning. And then lastly, we'll ask for anywhere from 1 to 5 supporting images. So supporting images is super open. It can range from like a napkin sketch up to a really beautiful illustration, up to like a fully rendered 3D model. Whatever your skill set, we'll be happy to take. And again, this is to illustrate to us how the whole might look, how it might play. Maybe it's like a vision or mood board. where you're pulling photos of other inspirations, anything to help us understand what you're dreaming of. And the thing I'll say is that because we want this application to be inclusive where anyone can apply. You don't have to be an artist, you don't have to be a designer. Those things are great. But if you don't have the ability to draw this in a really technical way, that's okay. That's what we're here for. If we love your idea and the concept, we're going to help turn that concept into a playable mini golf hole with the team at Dreamland. And we'll work with you to, kind of honor your concept and idea as best we can as we sort of turn a sketch into a playable mini golf hole. And we'll keep in communication with you. Changes might be made to your initial idea, and that's based on feasibility, scale, site plan, costs, a lot of factors. But again, we're going to keep in communication with you so that you're not like totally surprised by like a 360 or 180 on your design concept.
And I just kind of breezed over it at the beginning, but part of our sort of discernment about ideas and what's feasible or not is coming both from two different things. One is it's coming from, and we'll share a lot of different courses that we've played, but we've played over 300 and we kind of know what works, what doesn't work. And ultimately we were looking for this to be more fun and whimsical than we are worried about it being like a really challenging play. In fact, sometimes making a challenging play can make a much more difficult to fabricate and build whole than something that's just whimsical and fun.
And as you can see, Dreamland already has plenty of difficult and challenging gameplay. So this global adventure course is really meant to be fun and immersive and highly themed. It's going to be like a transcendent experience where you get to kind of tour the world like the Epcot of mini golf, shall we say.
And I think the other thing in addition to that, where I kind of quickly alluded to, that we've built and consulted on a number of courses, and in part of that process, and both having worked in fabrication shops, is that we've seen what works and doesn't work over time for things that, materials that are going to last, things where there's going to be like pinch points where someone could get hurt, or there's just things where it's really clear in the design. And if you make things that are too fragile or too precious, then on a mini golf course, they're not going to work. We've seen so many people, build things that they thought, well, how would someone ever break this? And it's like, well, we've been around enough, 6-7-year-olds that get excited and throw a putter and trip and fall over something to no fault of their own. And I think a lot of artists building stuff in a gallery would assume that there'd be somebody watching it and taking care of it. And the mini golf course, unfortunately, it's not as precious, and just things happen. And so what we've done on a lot of our projects is try to avoid making things that we can see breaking right away. So,
but that being said, you don't have to spec out
yes,
how your idea will be built. That is our job.
yes,
So if you have a grand idea, again, we're really looking for the
yes.
concept and the idea. And then it's our job to figure out how that gets made and to work with you and kind of communicate that. So how are we going to select holes? So the two of us, in addition to a team of folks over at Dreamland, will be jurying all the entries. And we're going to be looking at concept and feasibility. So again, just honing in this idea of the immigration theme, the global elements, and the originality of the design and how that merges with the theme. And then again, like we were mentioning, feasibility. So even if your idea is crazy, wild, imaginative, it might not actually work with physics. So think about real world construction and use. People actually do have to putt. We don't want totally conceptual holes here that just look pretty. We want them to be fun to play. But as we mentioned, if we love your idea, if it is crazy and over the top and totally unfeasible, but we love it, we'll work with you to figure out how to make it feasible and how to turn it into a playable hole. So start dreaming big and then think about reality, but keep those dreams really big about what this could be. Stipends, that's the fun part. So the main call here, this main round of entries will be due by midnight Central Standard Time on July 4th, 2021. And so everything in this what we're calling main round here is eligible for our prizes. We have a grand prize of 2,500 USD and 2 honorable mentions for second and third place of $1,000. And then all other entries selected will win $500 for the idea. And after July 4th, you can still submit ideas. We're going to keep it open on a rolling basis. We haven't committed to how many holes will be in the first build. So maybe the course starts with 9 holes and over time it builds up to 18. Maybe the course starts with 16 holes and over time builds up to 21. That is still in flux. It really depends on the ideas that we get. So we're going to keep it open after July 4th. However, if you submit after that, this first main round here, you won't be eligible for the grand prize or the honorable mention prizes. But if your idea does get selected after July 4th, you'll still be awarded that $500 stipend for compensation.
And just so you know that the jury will not only include us, but it will be including the team from Dreamland. And so a big part of it will be based on just like what excites them and what they like and what they can see fitting into their space and what represents sort of the concept that they're going for. But just to give you a sense of like how much space we have to work with, it's considerable. Like that there is a flexible amount of space for the amount of holes, is that they're just really looking for great ideas. And so don't worry about maybe the size being too big. I think I would worry about it being too small. And I wouldn't worry, I would think the concept's the most important thing. We can scale things up and down potentially with you, and we'll really work with you if you have an idea that conceptually that we're really loving. So
yeah, and this is outside. So think
yes.
about height. Height is a really great thing. You can really play visually with scale and having someone stand next to something that they can either walk through or stand next to for a photo. So in addition to having a lot of open space out there, you also have generally unlimited height. So this is what our timeline looks like. We've had the call open since April 28th. Tonight is our virtual info session, and we'll be posting a recording of this online for all those who missed it, or for anyone here who wants to tune back in and listen to us yabber on. The proposals are due again midnight Central Standard Time on July 4th. And then we'll spend probably July through August kind of narrowing down our selections, and by September at the latest, you'll hear if you're winning entry. It might be sooner than that.
Yeah, if there's ideas that we really like, and even before we get to like who's awarded what place, we might be in touch with you just to get the process or to get things in process for fabrication of the actual holes. And then, yeah, the course is going to be built throughout the winter. And then the hope is that we'll be opening up in the spring, which will be awesome. It'll be perfect weather. It's just, if we didn't mention already, Dripping Springs is about a half hour west of Austin, Texas. So that time of year in the spring, it's perfect. So, yeah.
So that kind of concludes the call part of this presentation. So if you have any questions about that, again, put them in the chat, or we'll have some time for Q&A at the end here. But we're going to kind of move on here to just some inspiration from courses that we've played that we just thought would be fun to share. And we just pulled a couple photos here, but we do have a page in our slideshow that we'll post as a PDF with links to even more places to look at. And you can always visit our website, acoupleofputts.com, and we've got hundreds and hundreds of course reviews, including all of the courses we're going to show you tonight. But this course is one of our favorites. It's called Around the World, which is very appropriate here. And it's located in Lake George, New York. And there's two actually 18-hole courses on the premise. There's the Around the World course and then the Around the USA course. So the Around the World course is the one we focused on here. But the Around the USA is also 18 different holes representing different states in the United States.
And this is a course that, like, if you look for like national lists of like some of like the must play mini golf courses out there, this always makes it. And it's probably about 50 years or so old, maybe even older than that. It's one of the older courses left in the US, and it's in great shape, and it's very well visited in upstate New York.
Yeah, so one of the key things about this course that makes it so great is obviously it's got the fun global theme, but the fun global theme isn't just on the sidelines, it's actually directly integrated into the gameplay. And it's hard to see in all of these images. But for example, the sombrero on the top right is actually like a half figure eight. So you actually put it into the sombrero, loop it around the edge, and use that to come out the other side of the dog leg. So it's actually a playable obstacle. The kangaroo, you actually go up a little jump and try to get the ball into its pouch, and then it comes out the back of the kangaroo towards the cup. The beer stein for Germany on the bottom left. It's hard to see in this image, but you can actually hit it through the beer stein and come out onto a lower putting green. You know, the pyramids are just immersive. They can putt through the windmill, etc. But not over the top, right? Each country has kind of one prominent thing about it on display, and then the whole in the gameplay is designed around that thing. And that's not the only way to go, but it's a really effective way to go, right? Keep it simple, pick a theme, and then be really smart about how the ball kind of moves through that particular theme. This one is a course outside of Madison, Wisconsin, and this one is themed completely around Madison, Wisconsin. So again, just kind of showing you examples of courses themed around certain locations. So there's a hole that you actually putt around or putt through the Capitol building, since Madison's the capital. Madison is also very well known for cheese. So there's a giant Swiss cheese where you can actually like climb through it for a fun photo. Or there's the giant hot dog slide, which is really funny and makes for a great photo. So you can see on the bottom left and right of the hot dog bun, there's actually pipes where the ball will come out. But then after you putt, you get to kind of slide through and kind of ride along with your ball and join it on the lower putting surface. Now that hot dog slide is not ADA accessible, and that is something we're going to consider, but it's not required, but do try to keep it in mind with your concepts. But again, if you have a great idea for a slide and we love it, we'll kind of work with you to figure that out. So you can think about it in your designs, but it doesn't, it's not mandatory at this stage.
And then in Philadelphia, in Franklin Square in their park, they also have a Philly themed mini golf course called Philly Mini Golf that has notable bridges. It has the love sculpture on the upper right. You have a couple of the notable artists and musicians from the area. Upper middle, you have the big library steps that art museum steps that are in Rocky and what have you. And so the whole course is themed around the city. It's really smart, and it kind of gives you an overview of what's there and helps tell the story, which is what we're hoping really to do with the immigration theme. And I'm seeing a question in there, and we're going to get to that in just a second. I will say that with some of the older courses out there, a lot of the ADA rules are within like probably the last, I think, 20
Yeah, there's a lot of grandfathering in. So around the world, what you're seeing there might not all have been built with ADA, but in current courses, usually at least half the course has to legally be ADA accessible. So if there's 18 holes, 9 of those, whether it's the front 9 or the back 9, need to be accessible, and the other 9 don't necessarily. So, again, it'd be great to be able to make the entire course accessible, which would mean being able to either have a wheelchair go onto the greens itself or have a wheelchair be able to go all the way around the greens, which would mean 36 inches of sidewalk around each green. But again, dream big of your idea, and we'll kind of help bring it back to reality with some of those guidelines.
Great question.
But that's a great question. Thanks for asking that.
And then this is one of the courses that we consulted on in Durham, North Carolina, that was actually themed completely around the city of Durham, North Carolina. And what you have here are the results of holes that were designed or sketched out or described in a similar manner in which we're looking for submissions on this project. And then we helped render them out, get them ready for a fabricator, and get them ready to play. And they're featuring really unique and distinct stories about Durham, North Carolina. And that's what we kind of are want to really encourage people to think about is like, if you're thinking about, Paris, can you go beyond the Eiffel Tower? If you're thinking about Egypt, can you go beyond the pyramids? If you're thinking about, Australia, can you go beyond the kangaroos? And so, for example, this hole on the left where you see the top of a like box truck getting ripped off by a bridge, this bridge is an infamous landmark in Durham, North Carolina that you can find in YouTube videos that they call it the can opener. And it's got a lower than normal height where someone had set up a video camera to get video of all of the trucks that were like scraping the tops off under the bridge. People in the town know it. It's an odd and idiosyncratic idiosyncratic little piece of the town, and it's great. And then on the upper right, I think a great example is this church where there's a really interesting history behind this church. And I believe that there was a statue inside the church that was part of the history with it. And part of the reason that I'm guessing we are showing this slide and that Robin pulled this one out was that this was one of the proposals from a group of young kids that really just did a mini mock-up of this hole with pipe cleaners and generally talked about the play, and we brought it to life for them. And so we really were telling the truth when we said we want people to, of all abilities, to consider submitting ideas, and however you want to make it come to life. If you had a bunch of, vegetables and fruit and food around your house and you stacked them up in a certain way and you organized them and you took a photo of it and sent it to us and it described how that would play and it's related to your concept and the theme, great. We're really, really wide open, and we want to help make this a really inclusive course where a lot of different voices come to life, not just people that might have fabrication, design, and build skills. And even on the bottom, I think that one was another really simple one that's modeled around the basketball sort of folklore and one of the big games that people in the area really knew of Duke in the NCAA tournament years ago. Next slide.
So here's a list of just a few more courses to check out. And again, we'll post this whole slideshow as a PDF along with tonight's recording on all the website information so that you can visit these. But there's other unique courses. So around the world and around the USA are listed there. Park King Skill Golf has 2 courses that are really fantastic. Urban Putt is out in San Francisco, and they have a location in Denver. They're really doing unique, interesting things with the game of mini golf. And then Vitense, which we mentioned with the Madison themed course, they have some outdoor courses as well with some fun interactive elements. And then artist design courses are really fun and inspirational too. We've worked on a ton of these. The Indianapolis Museum of Art, the Walker Art Center has had many iterations of artist design golf. The Nelson Atkins Museum of Art in Kansas City, Bull City Mini, which we showed you, and then Can Wonderland here in St. Paul, Minnesota, has some really fun and inspirational hole designs as well. So these, again, are just some additional resources to help inspire you so you can kind of visit these courses, look at some images, watch some videos, and maybe just feel inspired to come up with your own ideas based off what you're seeing. So that is our spiel here. So we're going to open it up to questions. Again, you can put that your questions in the chat, or feel free to turn on your audio or video and ask us here. And I'm seeing one come in from Marlana. Are you able to share the ceiling budget or the fabrication budget for this project so we can keep this in mind while designing? I'm not gonna say there's no budget, but we actually don't want to like give it away because we really do want you to dream big, because if the owners of the course love your idea, they will actually make it happen. So and if it's too big, we'll help work with you to kind of scale it down to manageable. So it's a hard question to answer. I don't know if you want to say more about that.
I mean, if you go take a look at some of the photos on Dreamland's website of their sites, they have an 1,100 person outdoor venue. They have like a 25-foot tall sculpture, like this huge fiberglass sculpture that's like half black, half white, that like they have people do yoga in front of. They have all of these very like global themed statues throughout it. They have these massive water towers, like short to the ground water towers that are all painted and have murals on it, and some other cool art that they're fairly regularly adding. And so I think when you think of mini golf courses and some of the size and scale of things, like they're not that big. This course has big stuff. Like they're in Texas. They love
Everything's
singing,
bigger in Texas.
you know, deep in the heart of Texas, that like everything's bigger in Texas. They have a putting green that's the Texas flag. Like they like to do things big, so dream big. You know, as far as budget goes, I think some of it will be us, you know, working with fabricators and seeing where we have to make decisions to kind of make sure that we hone in the idea so that it's not only feasible for someone to build, because there are some ideas that we might have a hard time finding fabricators who are able to actually make it happen in the way that you described. That's always a possibility, but it also just might be like cost prohibitive, even if it's a really great idea on other levels, like that it might be something really difficult to maintain and, you know, all of that. But we don't want to put up any of those sort of roadblocks right now, because I think, you know, we haven't been told from the owners of the course to dial it back. So we're not going to encourage you to dial it back. And we'll work with you, even if we do have to sort of like bring things down a step to make sure that both your initial idea is honored, as well as making sure that it's fun and you'll feel proud of it. Because we've worked on a number of courses where, you know, it's been fabricated in other places and it didn't totally always hit the mark of what we wanted it to visually look like. And it was like a little bit of a surprise. We don't want any surprises here. We really want to bring you along in the process and make sure that you feel really good about it.
And I'll also say nothing is off the table yet. So I am hinting at there, you could use electricity and you could potentially have water with your hole. So that's not, yeah. We're not saying you have to do that, but you could. So just keep that in mind as well. You could play around with those ideas. It could be totally analog. It could have no moving parts at all. Totally fine. But if you had something that required some sort of electrical motor or something, I think that that's within the scope of this.
And another thing I'll say, just because I think I've saw a number of people in the chat that are from northern climates, keeping in mind that this is in Texas, the nice thing will be is that these holes are not going to have to withstand Minnesota winters. So that's going to make it a little bit, the holes aren't going to take as much damage from the elements as they might up here. As far as any concerns about moving parts breaking down or requiring maintenance?
Well, that's always a concern whenever you have moving parts, but we're hoping to work with a local fabrication shop to help build these. And typically with that comes that local fabrication shop, you know, helping if something does break. But the course does have a maintenance crew on site as well. So you know, it shouldn't have like 30 different motors that require all 30 motors to move at a certain cadence in order for the hole to play correctly. If you are going to use something like motors or moving parts, again, you know, try to keep it simple. If you look at most mini golf courses, the windmill is one simple motor, or the dinosaur hand moving up or down is one simple motor. So, you know, maybe like having 20 motors is not feasible within the scope, but certainly one or two larger moving parts, I think, would be reasonable.
And again, even if you know, want to allude to that, we could do this 20 things moving, but, you know, I'd be okay if it was just this. Like, again, we're not looking for super long descriptions, but, you know, I think just giving us like a sense of like how the whole could function without some of those things, or if they were adjusted, is always nice. Again, we'll work with you. If we really like the idea, we're going to make sure that, that we work with you to bring it to life.
Other questions?
And again, I would say too, while we listed a number of countries, one thing that you can consider it. Oh, I'm seeing it. I'm going to get to Marlana's question in a second here, is that you could, if you wanted to, without getting too broad, if there were like groups of countries or areas in the world that could also represent immigration, that the theme, that we're open to that too. It doesn't necessarily directly have to be around a specific country, but
Yeah,
I
it
think
could be like Eastern Europe, the Middle East, more generally. So that's something you could.
but we're not looking for like just do Africa. It's like there's tons of countries in Africa. So I mean, I think we're thinking of like where there are clusters and it makes sense to do that.
So Marlana, your question is, are there 5 holes total, or are we just submitting 5 design examples? So actually, that's a really good question. You're submitting one concept per submission, and you can submit up to 5 images to support that concept. So you would just do one idea with your 2 to 5 sentence description, and you might just have one supporting image, or you might have 5, right? You might have one sketch, one 3D model, one mood board, and then a photo of a hole you really like on a different course. And those might all be your supporting image for that one concept. As far as how many holes there are total, that's still up in the air. This course certainly has space for 18 plus full-size holes on the course. We just haven't decided. It's going to depend on the ideas that come in. We might start with just 9 holes. We might start with 18 holes. We might add more holes over the next few years. It's going to be kind of a evolving process for the course. Does that answer your question? I hope. If not, please feel free to put more questions in the chat, or turn on your audio as well. You're welcome to chat. You want to go back to the slide, just this general submission slide for those who came in a little bit late, just as a landing page for us here. Go back in time.
We had a question, should we avoid political or religious landmarks or artwork, for example, the Christ the Redeemer statue in Brazil, which is explicitly Christian?
That's a good question.
That's a good question. I'm not going to say no, because there very well could be a number of different holes that represent like a number of world religions. There could be one from Ireland that maybe goes specifically Catholic, that somebody does it really smart, or that there is some thing related to that landmark in there that's Catholic. Same thing could happen with particular imagery in the Middle East. I think we're sensitive to any sort of imagery that might be controversial.
It's a family course at the end of the day. So
I mean, we want it to be things that people would know, that are recognizable and would not be like, it wouldn't be offensive. But yeah, like the Christ the Redeemer statue, if you're doing a whole themed around, Brazil, or I believe that's in Rio de Janeiro, that like that doesn't seem completely that doesn't seem like a bad idea at all. But be creative with it, and going deep into the country's histories if you can. But those big things are not, they're not a bad idea.
But at the end of the day, the key here is it should be fun, right? So whatever you do choose to represent, landmarks or cultures, put a fun twist on it. Again, it's mini golf. People are going out to play with their family on the weekends or the evenings, and they're looking to have a good time. And so while this course is global and it is immigration themed, it's not intended, from my understanding, to like be super political in nature. A little more lighthearted and whimsical take on that theme.
And another thing I'd recommend, and those of you, there's a couple of people from Minnesota here that probably have been to Can and know that in addition to being a mini golf place, that it is like generally an entertainment complex. And as I mentioned, there is a live music venue at Dreamland. It's worth following their social media and seeing all the different stuff they're hosting there. They're hosting everything from country music artists to yoga to they're having sumo wrestling in the next week. I mean, they're really doing a lot to make this a really interesting and compelling place for a wide variety of people to come out to. I think they had like a dating app hosted a thing not too long ago where it was like a meetup. They really want it to be a gathering place for a lot of different activities. And maybe that will help sort of in your thinking of different countries and different holes that could kind of fit within that really eclectic vibe that you're going to get there. Yeah. And like we said, a lot of those submission or a lot of those examples that we provided in these links, if you do like Google image searches in addition to the, photos that we have up on our website, you'll find a lot of different variety of stuff. I mean, around the world got tons and tons of photos out there if you want to see more than what we got on our one visit there. It's a pretty incredible course, and you can see what people did with those themes, but we're definitely hoping not to see any of the themes directly from those courses. We have like a weird memory for mini golf holes. We could like show us a picture without any context and go, I think that's at there. So like if you're pulling stuff from around the world, we're definitely going to note that.
Yeah, don't just copy what's out there, right? Try to be creative and innovative with your ideas here. We're looking to be inspired and surprised and learn new things and learn new parts about culture that we didn't know about in different countries. So I think the more sort of interesting or nuanced or historical, like odd histories, the better, right? Because we'll have didactics at every hole. So if it is something obscure and not so obvious, the didactic can also help tell that story. And then the people playing can learn even more. So,
and some of the holes that were on that course were not like super visually. I'm thinking of one that I think was the 18th hole, where if you're familiar with the world one, where it was like a volcano around the world. And I think there might have even been a version of it on the Round the USA. No, that was a New York one. On the Round the World, the last hole was really this volcano hole. And if you've seen them at normal courses, it's this, you have the cup on top of like a small area. Usually the cup's a little bit bigger. And the theme of the hole was not really super incorporated into it, but it represented like a volcano and I forget what part of the world. It might have been Vesuvius.
Yep, and they had like Venetian holes. It was kind of an Italy loosely themed hole.
So. And so it was really loose on like the big thematic stuff. It didn't have the big pyramids, didn't have the big statues, but the play was really smart for where it was in the course and how you finished up, and especially like for gameplay and challenge, a hole that finishes off that might tip the scores of the game. We really like that. You'll see that at Parking on the roulette wheels that they have, that the final score you get on the roulette can really tilt the game, and so could that big volcano hole. I mean, we've definitely been to courses where there's that kind of gameplay. So when you're thinking about it, you can also propose, and we're definitely open to suggestions on the actual gameplay within it, in making it really fun, because there are really subtle small things that can work well, and that not everything on the course can be and will be able to be really huge. There's a reason why there's like a big stipend of 2,500 and 1,000 and 1,000 for those really big ideas. Those more than likely are going to be the really big audacious holes, but within that there's also going to be some of those $500 submissions that are really smart and fun and awesome. They're going to be selected too, that might not be as big of a hole, but are still going to be things that we want to have play like something on a normal mini golf course, and would be a lot of fun. And you can do that in really small spaces. So all shapes and sizes are welcome.
Yeah, anything from very simple to very complex. Simple doesn't always mean boring or not easy, right? Sometimes simple can be really smart and really challenging and really well done and creative. So again, dream big, and some of you might really design over the top crazy things with motors and giant immersive waterfalls or whatever, and then some of you might just have a really smart simple idea that is really fun and effective. So We're looking for a whole range. And again, we're just providing you some inspiration for your own ideas.
Should I go to the last slide and have that up so you can see?
Yeah. So here's some contact info, social media for Dreamland, their address if you want to look them up on Google Map, satellite view, and kind of check out the property. And then on the next slide is our contact info, social media. So we post all sorts of mini golf content, and you can find a lot of our designs on coupleputts.com. And again, lots of reviews of other courses for inspiration. And since I don't see any other questions coming in for the interest of time and everyone.
Quick one.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I can't do typing because I'm on my phone. Or I could, but it'd be awkward. But I was just curious if you had any intention or aspirations for having cohesion between all of the holes, or if it's more potentially like kind of islands within the overarching theme.
I think the latter, sort of islands within the overarching theme, and then we will work with the Dreamland team to sort of curate those together and put them in an order that we think makes sense to help tell a larger story. So, you know, the whole 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, like we'll try to figure out what makes the most sense as far as flow. But I think the cohesion is just that global theme, and within that, it can be vastly different.
Cool, thanks.
And we had another question in the chat, and they were wondering if the person who was chosen for second, etc., will get to design a hole, or is the winner responsible for designing all of them? And we're looking for proposals for single holes for every submission, and that we expect that most people will only submit a single hole submission, but we are welcoming people to submit more than one. So if you want to design more than one, you'll get paid for more than one.
Well, if it's selected.
If it's
so
selected.
To answer your question, Marlana, no, if you're a winner, you don't have to design the whole course.
No.
You're going to submit a whole design, and if we like it, we're going to build that whole design. And so the first, second, and third is just based on our favorites as a jury. By us, I mean Tom and I, in addition to the Dreamland team. So good, that answers that. Great. Yeah, you will not be responsible for designing the whole course. We're hoping to have like 18 different holes, but 18 different teams or people represented on the course.
And we'll be working, and part of our work on this project, I think that I'm probably already touched on, but just wanted to reiterate, is that we're going to be not only helping source fabricators, people that are going to, you know, be getting turf and things like that are going to help potentially sculpt fiberglass statues or build different mechanical things that go on the course. You know, we're also going to be taking whatever you submit and turning that into something a shop can work with. The more condition that you want to give it to us, in which we can just turn it over to a shop and they can work with it and is ready to go, and then we don't really have to do much to adjust, is going to give probably a higher likelihood that the thing that you submit will look pretty dang close to what gets built. But even within that, again, budgetary concerns, you know, you could say, I want this to be 50 feet tall, and we're like, how about 20? You know, like there are going to be some things that get adjusted, but we are really wanting to not like constrict people when they're thinking about it. Like we want people to go big and have fun and imagine things that are not out in the world. Like we've worked on a lot of artist design courses, and the reason why that we put them in there is that many of them took a theme and went wild directions with it. And there have been some of the most fun courses, not only to play, but to look at visually, because what ends up happening with a lot of courses, they're built by the same companies. And so you can kind of see the fingerprint of that company on every hole. Whereas the artist design courses, it's just like, you know, like a sculpture park for those of you that are artists and you go to it, that there's all sorts of different styles and vibes, and that they might not visually all be talking to each other. Although, if, you know, we're using a lot of the same fabricators, there will be some things that will have some similarities by materials and what have you, but ultimately they're going to have their own personality, and that's okay. That's kind of what we're looking for. The other courses have a little bit more cohesion because they're built and designed by the same people. This is sort of meant to be a little bit different.
And I should say, and Christiane, I know you have some questions, so we'll get to you next. But I should also say that this course will be made of concrete. So we will be pouring concrete and putting turf down, and then we'll have fabrication shops build the obstacles, whatever those might be, and those will get put on top of the concrete. So just to clarify, this won't be like plywood built or pop up. This will be a permanent concrete miniature golf course that you will not have to figure out how to build. You just have to provide us with the grand ideas. And Christiane, you want to ask? And then I see Alexander, you've got another question in there as well.
Yeah, so I think actually what Alex just typed there, having to do with elevation, that was one of my questions too. It sounds like you already know like the plot of land that this is going to be on. Is it completely flat, or
the site itself has a subtle slope to it, but we can certainly move earth a little bit out there. So if you want to have something with some different elevations or tiers,
okay,
that's certainly doable. We can plan around that. Yep.
Okay,
Great question.
Yeah.
Alex, was there more to your question there, or did that answer it?
Nope, that answered it.
Okay, cool. Looks like it. I hadn't finished reading the whole thing. And then, so I guess my kind of main questions are around the theme. I think the theme of immigration is really interesting and awesome. And I'm curious how you're differentiating that from just kind of like cultural or global. Like, where does the immigration piece come into there, and kind of what's like the thinking behind that, and like the reason for choosing that? And like, so for instance, how would it be different than like the around the world course that you've been talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think some of the holes you might not see much difference, and then others, yeah, that's where we're kind of hoping that interesting histories come in, or personal ties or connections to cultural traditions kind of come into play. Sort of how someone's story from another country influences who they are living here. So we're really open to interpretation on that. And so I think that will vary submission to submission, and there's not a concrete answer for that. But do you want to talk about the reasoning behind the immigration theme with the broader course and philosophy?
Well, yeah, I mean, the larger immigration theme is just that the course owners are huge proponents of having very open borders in the United States. They believe that the country, the United States is better when we're allowing free travel of people back and forth, that both economically and culturally we benefit from having open borders. And so for them, I think there is a part of the course, like representing things from these other countries, that talks to the richness that's coming in. And so I think that's again loosely how that's a little different than around the world, is sort of connecting it. Ideally, we're having a lot of the submissions come from places that have like a big chunk of people that have immigrated to the United States, but that's kind of a considerable chunk of the world. I mean, there's deep histories, if you're in Minnesota, that we have huge Hmong and Somali populations that have come specifically to Minnesota and are part of countries that, frankly, a lot of people aren't as familiar, and they're not like the biggest countries in the world, but there's a huge population that's immigrating here. And then there's other smaller countries where people have decided to move here for all sorts of different reasons, that I think we want to tell some of those smaller stories, because, like we showed with the can opener bridge, we know that within like the story of this country, there's all sorts of different stories, cultures coming together, and what that can be. And so sometimes it's a really small story that most people don't know, like the can opener in Durham. Most people didn't know about the can opener except the people there. So in some ways, telling the story, someone who's immigrated here from a country where there's not a lot of people, that's a story to tell too. It might even be a story of like their family that lives there and they don't, and telling the story about like how their families experienced it. We do want submissions from overseas. So, part of the reason we're recording this is to really put it out there and hope that, someone overseas might be might have moved back to their home country, but had lived in the United States for some period of time and has family over here. That's great. That's what we would love to see, but we also know there's people that have had generations of family here too that also represents the immigration story. We want to have like a really broad swath of that, in the same way that a mini golf course, like the best ones that we like, have a lot of different play experiences and have a lot of visual experiences, when they're really fun. We want that in the theme too. We want to really bring out all those different stories and to really leave people with an impression.
The other thing I'll say is the around the world course is a lot of landmarks or inspired by souvenirs that the owner had brought home from his travels. And, with immigration, you can also think about things that maybe your previous generations that immigrated here from other countries brought with them here and now are maybe part of pop culture in America, or are more well known because they were brought here. And, whether it's a certain food or type of clothing or what, cultural thing, or institutions that came up, from people who came from other places. So things that were brought here, inspired by home countries too. So, landmarks and souvenirs are like the very obvious iconic things. But it could be, things that have evolved here that are part of our current climate and pop culture that are from elsewhere.
And then to kind of follow up with this discussion, and I think you said this, but I just want to confirm, you'd like each hole that's submitted to kind of be inspired or like associated with a particular country or countries is the idea?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say that would be primary. Again, if you want to do like regions, that's fine. I wouldn't dissuade anybody if they thought I wanted to have an entire one hole to propose for the course. That's the globe. If you could somehow flatten that out or whatever, that again isn't, something that would be opposed to. I think it's all going to depend on what else is submitted and what's out there, and sort of our overall team that's working on the concept for this course and what we're feeling works with. And we're if we have questions and we like parts of an idea but we're not sure about it, we want to make sure that we're understanding it right, we'll probably follow up as things are submitted, just to be clear before we even start jurying it. We like to leave that door open to make sure that people's intentions aren't being misconstrued in a meeting, and then all of a sudden we're like, we love your idea of this, and this is what we read into it with the short descriptions, and then all of a sudden you're like, that's kind of not what I was going for. We really do want to honor like what your initial intention was as best as possible. We want everybody who's connected to this course to be really proud of it, feel a sense of like ownership and belonging in the same way that, I think the entire course and Dreamland, it's like the notion of belonging in the United States. And we hadn't talked with the Dreamland folks about this specifically yet in the overall process, but I would imagine that will probably be some didactics around the holes or some name recognition on the course. That's TBD, and some of it will just depend on how that course comes together. It could be one big board, it could be on a scorecard. We haven't determined that. At the very least, it would be on the website, but I'm guessing that there will be probably some descriptions on the course, given their real strong desire to have people sort of learn about the richness of all the immigrant populations that have come to the United States. That will probably be represented in there.
And just one follow up to your question, Christiana, if, I think we could also be open to maybe some more nuanced takes on immigration. Like if you had an idea for like an Ellis Island themed hole, that still fits the theme, but maybe isn't a particular country. I think we're super open to that too. So while most of them will probably be representative of countries or regions, I think there's some wiggle room within that as well.
Dream big, like you said before, kind of submit whatever ideas. And okay, sounds great.
Sell us on it, make us love it, and then it, if we love it, we'll pick it. So
I'm sure if Steve's watching this, he won't mind us telling this. but to get a sense of like the people that are running this and the kind of dreamers they are,
Mhm.
Steve, one of the founders and owners of this course, watches Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory once a week.
Once a week or once a month?
I thought it was once a week. It could
One
be
of
once a month.
those.
He watches
A
it,
lot.
he watches it often. And I think that does really give you a sense of the joy that they want to come out of this space and want the sense of like people belonging. They have like kids day on Sundays, and they're really, with all of the games that they're having there with pickleball, with mini golf, they're really aiming to elevate the games. They take them seriously. Steve is the type of person who found Mike, who designed the other courses, by going up to Cross Lake and Google searching for best mini golf in the area. He's the type of person that really wants to make things big and to do things really cool. And that's why with this project, they really want to get ideas from all over the place in hopes that it will add on to what's already a pretty exceptional place. And I should make mention for everybody watching and for all of you here that there's also, we did these time lapse videos of us walking through the big challenge course, and you can see the other course. That will give you hopefully somewhat of a sense of scale. I will say it's really, really hard to capture on video how absolutely huge this place is. It's of all the mini golf courses we've played, the actual property that it's on is probably the biggest property, but the course itself that's already there is massive. So, you know, in thinking about what you get to be a part of, the cool thing is this is a really one of a kind, exceptional, cool space where they're really trying to elevate mini golf. They're going to have, you know, local tournaments and other gatherings there throughout the year that will be highlighting this more and more. So we're really excited for people to kind of have like a lot of different people having their ideas represented in this really big, fun and inviting space. And if you're in Austin, Texas, just about 30-minute drive outside of Austin, and it's easy to find. There's a massive flag that you can see in the distance as you're driving there. And we recommend it if you're traveling through that area in the next few months, and following them on social media.
Any other questions for us?
I do have one more.
Yeah.
So I think it was before when we were talking about kind of overall cohesion for the whole course and all the holes. Tom said, I wrote it down, many courses took a theme and went wild directions with it. So I think you're referring to like many of like the inspiration courses, probably many that are on the list that you're sharing. But when you said that, were there like particular courses that you had in mind that like did that really well? Like that you could list? Just kind of curious.
Yeah. I think we thought like immediately what we think of is like the Indianapolis Museum of Art's 2 artist design courses. There was one hole that was on a history of, was it squirrels that were sort of devastating cornfields, and they were like spinning squirrels on the hole. One of the holes was around that if you drive through there, they have these massive wind generating turbines. There was one of them that was a hole around kind of a small place. I think this was on the nature themed course that was like a Japanese garden that was really cool. And then another one of the holes on the course was around, had a triceratops that it was drowning in lava. And then there was another with like a beehive, and that was like a nature theme. So like that was all over the place. And then on the theme, the other Indianapolis course, the Indianapolis Museum of Art, and we have photos up of these, was around the bicentennial in Indiana. And there was a whole themed around a professional wrestler, Kurt Vonnegut. There was some fun, was it a defunct theme park? That was one of them. There was, some of them were just artist inspired. One of them I think was around the airport there.
And then one hole actually took a really unique spin and took the song for,
Oh yeah.
it was called like Back Home Indiana. So it's like Indiana's like theme song. And they actually
It was from the Indianapolis 500.
Yeah, so they actually built a hole with metal wind chimes, and then you could take a putter, and if you hit the wind chimes in order, it would actually play out the tune to the song. So that's like visually you would never connect it, but then it has this whole audio impact. So it's taking it to a different level. So that's another really good example of like taking a theme, but then totally flipping it on its head and giving us a very surprising moment.
And that was on the same course with the squirrels, and then a hole that was themed around the interesting rock history in Indianapolis, because I think Axl Rose and a couple other people were from there, and they took like some broken guitars, and it was like a musician. And
rock and roll, not rocks.
Yeah, rock and roll, not rocks. Yes, and that they like the theme around Indiana was like those musicians that were from there. And again, like the whole played super differently than everything else was there. There was someone is it Will Shorts from the New York Times is from there. And there's a New York Times themed one.
Yeah, a crossword puzzle hole, yeah.
And like there was no visual cohesiveness to it at all. If you look at the photos, and it was probably one of the most fun experience courses you could play. The holes themselves were their own entities, and it works really well. And so that's when we were saying like, go nuts, because we've seen that work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we have a fabricator that's doing them all, they might have some sort of cohesive look, but we're guessing if we get some really good ideas, we're going to use multiple fabricators. So it will not have like all one specific look, that it will have like a whimsical and kind of eclectic vibe, and that's fine. I mean, Can Wonderland in St. Paul's probably another great example of something like that. I think, you know, most of those holes were built by different people, and it has the holes have their own kind of vibe within themselves.
But I wouldn't say there's necessarily an overarching theme to that course, but I think sometimes that overarching theme, like global adventure or like Indiana bicentennial, those, or garden or nature, those overarching themes kind of help take multiple different words and string them into a lovely sentence, metaphorically.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I know we're hitting just over an hour here. I want to be mindful of everyone's evenings and time, but we're happy to answer any other questions you might have.
We can literally talk mini golf forever.
Well, we are available. Tom and I are available by email at acoupleofputts@gmail.com, but you're also welcome to email dreamlandsubmissions@gmail.com, which is the email on the form that essentially goes to us. So we'll answer your questions either way. So if anything comes up, please do write us. Beyond that, we'll be posting this up on the websites, and we can't wait to see what you all submit. We're really looking forward to seeing what ideas you have in mind.